Well, thank y'all for your attention. I have the distinct honor and privilege to introduce our keynote speaker this afternoon, Ms. Carlotta LaNier. In 1957, 14-year-old Carlotta Walls was the youngest Little Rock 9 member to integrate an all-white Little Rock Central High School. She and 8 other Black students faced angry mobs, racist elected officials, and federal intervention by President Dwight D. Eisenhower, who was forced to send in the 101st Airborne to escort the 9 safely into the building. Little did she realize that this was the beginning of a journey that would challenge prevailing attitudes, break down barriers, and forever change the social landscape of America. Overcoming her initial need to forget her turbulent past, Carlotta LaNier has since told her dramatic story for the first time in her memoir, A Mighty Long Way, My Journey to Justice at Little Rock Central High School. After graduating as the first and only Black woman of the Little Rock 9 from Little Rock Central High School in 1960, Carlotta LaNier attended Michigan State University and graduated from Colorado State College, represented. Now the University of Northern Colorado, which has awarded her an honorary doctorate of humane letters and on whose board of trustees she presently sits. In addition to receiving the Congressional Gold Medal and the NAACP Spingarn Medal awarded to her as the member of the Little Rock 9, Carlotta LaNier is an inductee in the Colorado Women's Hall of Fame, Girl Scouts Women of Distinction, and the National Women's Hall of Fame. She serves as president of the Little Rock 9 Foundation, created to promote equality of opportunity for all, particularly in the field of education. A key protagonist in one of the most gripping watershed moments of the civil rights movement, Carlotta LaNier delivers her powerful keynote that reflects on history while inspiring hope for the future. An icon of perseverance and strength. In her lectures, Ms. LaNier revisits the courageous journey of the Little Rock 9, and recounts a powerful chronicle that pioneered its presence into Black history. Her heroic and daring story reflects on the history and current state of civil rights, race, and diversity. Please join me in giving the warmest of welcomes to a woman of strength, a pioneer of social justice and equality, a trailblazer in Black history, and a hero to all, Ms. Carlotta LaNier.
Special thanks to this wonderful group that is gathered here after 2 years of probably doing it by Zoom or whatever. But thank you for inviting me here today and to talk a little bit about my story. And I'm here today with a lot of energy because you are my audience. What do I know about you? Of the modern world. Here's the most important thing. First, you are young. And second, you are smart. Young and smart. And you may not like what our country is handing you to fix. But maybe no generation before you was particularly satisfied or happy with their charge. Maybe you don't like that Roe v. Wade has been overturned, and this isn't a comment on abortion, right or wrong. It is a comment on a woman having the right to determine what to do with her own body. Maybe you don't like listening to the January 6th hearings, but someday down the road, historians are going to find this information helpful. Maybe you're having trouble determining what is right, what is the truth. take your information not from one source, but from multiple sources, and figure out what seems reasonable to you. Think it through. We are depending on you, whether you know it or not. You have a huge responsibility here. What does it mean that people are testifying under oath, under penalties if they do not tell the truth? At this point, I think I'll just, instead of continuing about all these things that have been going on in this global society for the past, especially for the past 5-6 years, I'm going to move on into my own story, one that actually began long before you were born, at least for most of you out in the audience. This year represents my 65th year of telling my story about our participation in the integration of Little Rock Central High School. And while I tell this story, just keep this also important suggestion in your head. One day, if you have not done so before, I need to vote. I have to vote. People have given their lives so that you have that right. And yes, I'm asking you to double task. You do it every day. So while I begin, just keep thinking, I need to think more seriously about voting. Over a half century ago, I lived right here in Little Rock, Arkansas. The year was 1957. Brownlee Board of Education had made its appearance in 1954. So 3 years later in the spring, when I'm in the 9th grade, my homeroom teacher came in with his mimeograph bulletin. And there aren't too many gray-haired people out in the audience who understands what the word mimeograph means. But that is what it was when I was going to school. You would go into the office and pick up the bulletin, and then you would go back into your classroom, and then you would read that bulletin. Most of you probably got yours over the intercom at your particular high schools or colleges, but this is the way I came up here in Little Rock, Arkansas. And Mr. Smith came in and read that bulletin, and halfway down the list, he asked anyone, or stated actually, anyone who had any interest in attending Little Rock Central High School and lives, and he gave street boundaries, please sign this sheet of paper, and he put it on the first desk, and it went around the room. He went on to number 8, 9, or 10 on the bulletin. So once it got to me, I immediately signed the sheet of paper and gave it to the person behind me. Over 100 of us, in fact, signed up to go. But because of the hurdles, the unknown rules at the time, there would be only 9 of us to actually start the school year in the fall, with 1 senior, 5 juniors, 3 sophomores, 6 girls, 3 boys. I was one of the sophomores and one of the girls. Now here are some of the rules. And I might state at this point in time, out of that 100, 39 of us sat before the superintendent of schools with our parents. So 114, I think it was, down to 39. 39 sitting in that hot, humid office of the superintendent of schools. And I kind of think that it was the Jackie Robinson test, that there were only 39 of us out of 100 plus who had signed up. I think that they looked at our grades, They looked at our volunteerism here in the city of Little Rock. They looked at whether we were church-born kids, non-troubling type students, the kind that just did their work, did well in school, and participated in extracurricular activity. Those, I think, were some of the things that they looked at. And that's why it had been put down to 39 students before the superintendent. And there we sat. And I like to say at this point in time, I had been vice president of the student body at my junior high school. I had been the captain of my basketball team. I had been captain of my cheerleading team. I was on the National Honor Society, and I did volunteer work here in Little Rock. I participated in the YWCA. I did all of those sort of things because that was how I was brought up to be a citizen of this country and of this city and state, to give back and to learn all that you can and still be a part of the community, whether it was segregated or not. So that was early learning. It all came from home and from my church experience. So, and also from that segregated elementary school and junior high school that I went to. We had great teachers. I want you to understand that. In fact, because they did not have access to books, to the latest books, to all of the opportunities here that Little Rock had, what opportunities that they had, that they did not have the ability to take us to those sort of places. Maybe once a year we would have a field trip where the white schools were doing all of those sort of things. But those Black teachers that I had prepared us well. And we did not know that until later, how well prepared we were to attend Little Rock Central High School. And just to backtrack a little bit, I grew up on a street that was all Black. And the street a block away was all white. School always started the day before Labor Day, a day after Labor Day. The school was always out the day before Memorial Day. But all summer long, Black and white kids played together. And that happened in my neighborhood. We had an open field between these two streets. So I played softball all summer long. And I would hear from the white kids, we're getting new books in the fall. And I was always happy for them because I knew that their books were going to be coming over to my school. I never had a new book. I never had a new book to put my name in first. All of my books, I was 6, 7, 8 name in there. So having access to the best education possible was the driving force for me, because that's what I heard at home. The road to success is through education. So you get all the education you possibly can get. So, sitting before Superintendent Blossom, we heard some of these rules that we didn't know about when we were asked if we wanted to go central, which I need to mention was ranked in the top 40 high schools in America. Now understand that. Little Rock Central High School was ranked in the top 40 high schools. And I was here about 10 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. And I heard the principal at that particular graduation state that it was that they were ranked 34th in the nation. This was about 10 years ago. And that put a smile on my face. I'm going to tell you why. Because one of the reasons that people always wanted to say that was against integration of kids going to school is that when you let them in, them meaning people of color, the academic level goes down. Now, 1957, it was in the top 40. For 40, 50 years later, it's still in the top 40. Where it is today, I'm assuming it is still very close. So that piece of information, I think, is worth remembering. Not only was it one of the top 40 high schools in America, it had been voted by the American Architects Institute as the most beautiful high school in America. $1.5 million, 1927, $1.5 million. So that was quite a bit of money to build that particular high school. And I hope you have an opportunity to go by it, see it. It's a treasure. It is a national treasure. And have the opportunity to go to the museum. I don't know whether it's open or not, but at this point in time, at least if you can just drive by it, I think it would be worth your time. But thinking about that 1.5 million in 1927 to build that school, and me having that opportunity to go to that school that I pass every day coming in this direction to Dunbar Junior High School. I think about that all the time. It was in my neighborhood, just less than a mile away. And I had to pass it all the time to go to that segregated junior high school. But back to the rules. No extracurricular activities of any kind. I had to come to school at Central, go home when classes were ended. I could not go back for any football games or basketball games or anything of that nature. No dances, no clubs, none of the things that I'm sure each and every one of you had the opportunity to do in your particular high school. All we could do was go to school. No boys were allowed to be in a play or anything that was within a close proximity to a girl. No dating across racial lines. And as it turned out, this would not be a problem since rarely did anyone speak to us. But this was stated in that meeting with the superintendent of schools to the 39 of us who sat there. And I felt for the fellas that were sitting there that had to be brought up. And here's the other rule. If something happened while at school that was not appropriate, an adult must be a witness. It had gotten to the point that after the second or third incident at Central, I didn't even take it to the vice principal or to the counselors, because I knew nothing was going to get done unless there was an adult who witnessed. Our word was not sufficient, or perhaps even believable. So for students who were involved in athletics and clubs and bands and social activities, leaving them would be a difficult choice to make. Yet 9 of us chose to do so. We weren't 9 friends going into Central. When they finally did let us in, we were 9 students who happened to share a race. And I will tell you, we did become friends pretty quickly. And for the most part, each of us was assigned classes where we were the only Black student in the room. Each of us navigating the enormous hallways of the school was doing it alone. And I cannot tell you what a difference just the occasional smile made. We didn't know that the governor would turn against us. We didn't realize that the President of the United States, Dwight D. Eisenhower, would have to call out the 101st Airborne, over 1,000 of them, to get us inside the school. We didn't realize that the story itself would become the biggest domestic crisis of Eisenhower's administration, or the biggest story of the year in this country, and second only to the launching of Sputnik. And as I said before, I know most of you weren't born, okay? But Sputnik was a big deal, okay, here in this country and on the world scene. And we were, as I said, we were the second biggest story. And this is according to the Associated Press for 1957. And often when you're simply trying to do what you think is best for you and your future, or when you try to seek out opportunity, when you try to be prepared, when you have some ambition, there could be something that tries to stop you on your path. So those are the sort of things that are going on, and those can go with you today. Because I want you to understand that you might be seeking out various opportunities, and you might be, and I know you are prepared because you're young and smart. So, but sometimes there's something there that tries to stop you on your path. So what might have been a simple matter, the 9 of us going to school at Central in the fall, facing more white faces than we'd ever seen together in our lives, except on television or in movies, became complicated because Arkansas's worst governor got involved. And my parents voted for office for the first 2 times, but I can assure you they never voted for him again. He had been a moderate in a moderate state at the time. He fell subject to the pressure of the fierce segregationists, who convinced him that he may have a shot at a 3rd term in the governor's seat if he made a strong stand against our entering the all-white center. Governor of Georgia, Governor of Alabama were 2 that courted him during those days to do exactly what he ended up doing. Truth be told, beyond being a governor, Fathers didn't really know what to do with himself, so he sided with the segregationists and made that strong stand. He called out the Arkansas National Guard to ring the school to protect the citizens of Little Rock, he said. And as my family watched all of this on television, I knew that I was a citizen. My father paid taxes on our home and all of those sort of things, and I felt that the situation was going to be for all the citizens, white and Black, against the troublemakers, the segregationist crowd, who became in the press, the mobs, and even the thugs. I hope that mind of yours was working under these circumstances. I knew which side I was on. Fathers predicted that blood would run in the streets. Had I been more than 14 years of age, if pushed at the time, well, isn't Governor Fathers a thoughtful man? He wants to protect us from blood that will run in the streets. And that early September 3rd, 1957 night, when I went to bed, I slept the last night of innocence of my life. Being an expert seamstress, my mother usually made all my clothes. But this was a special occasion. I was going to a new school. And at my house, we never thought of it or talked about it as a new white school. It was simply a new school. So my great uncle purchased me a new store-bought dress to wear on this first day at my new school. And my mother drove me to the corner where I was supposed to meet the other kids. we were several blocks away from the crowd, but she was not worried because she saw some Black ministers who were there to walk with us to school. And in the care of God's ambassadors, there was nothing to fear. I got to the group, there was a prayer, and a group of ministers walked with us up to the corner. And we were met by the head of the National Guard, who came over to this assembled group. He addressed the white minister, okay, also there to support us, and told us that no Negroes would be permitted to attend or enter Central on that day. I couldn't believe it. I see this picture of me standing there, and it's going through my head, as though it was a moment of disbelief. I love school, and here I was, ready to go to school, and I was not being permitted to go to this school on that day. I simply did not understand the message. I'm 14 years of age, okay? Oh, and by the way, that store-bought dress that I wore on that first day and subsequent 2 other first days now hangs behind glass in space at the National Museum of African American History and Culture at the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C., along with my report card and my diploma. Over the next 2.5 weeks, which is the time were the longest weeks of my life, the 9 of us met together. We went to court. We listened to the news on television. We read the morning paper, and we waited. On several occasions, something would happen, and I thought, well, this certainly means we'll be going to school tomorrow. But I was always wrong. We had the best representation in the federal court ever, and that was Thurgood Marshall, who had come here to represent us in the federal court. And I also like to say that we had a great federal judge that sat there, who was about 4 feet 5 inches tall. He was a little short man by the name of Ronald Davis from North Dakota, from Park. I think that the other federal judges that were assigned to this federal court probably went fishing, and they had to bring in another federal judge, and that was Ronald Davis. He heard our case. Finally, the governor went north to meet with President Eisenhower. And they came out of that meeting place together, smiling into the cameras as though they had solved world hunger and made a path toward peace. Little did we know they hadn't even made peace in Little Rock. But they smiled so big, and once again, I thought, now we could go to school. And I was learning a lesson. What you see, what you think, what is so obvious, what is so easy to believe will be, well, maybe not. I'll speed up the month of September 57. The governor removed the guard and a few police. 17 Little Rock's finest was sent to the school to hold back this mob that had grown to over 1,000. And on the morning of September 23rd, we entered the school for the first time, but a bomb threat, the mobs outside, the fear for our lives, all caused us to be gathered up in the midst of our 3rd class and rapidly removed from the building. And I must say that that was probably my scariest day because of how it was all done and taken to the bowels of that high school and put in 2 police cars and blankets thrown in. And we were told to stay underneath the blankets. But you know what teenagers do. You know, I came out from London because I heard the policeman tell the policeman who was driving, put your foot to the floor and don't stop for anything. And then I had this feeling of this rush of going up a ramp. And it's in the dark. And then all of a sudden, these two doors open. And we flew through those doors. And if anyone had been going across that sidewalk, they would immediately have been killed as fast as that car was driving. So it was one scary day to be spirited out of the school. And I think at that time, all America was watching this on television. Not at that moment, but that evening. And I say that because you're accustomed to news on the move 24 hours. During my day, during those days, you got 15 minutes of local news and 15 minutes of national news. So it was that evening that President Eisenhower saw what was going on. I'm sure he heard about it before then, but what was happening in Little Rock. And because he had raised his hand and sworn to uphold the Constitution of the United States, President Eisenhower was disgusted by what he saw on television. And I know this because I had the opportunity to hear and speak with his Attorney General 25 years later. So President Eisenhower trumped the government. He called out the country's military elite, over 1,200 screaming eagles of the 101st Airborne Troopers, heroes from World War II, rolled in here from Fort Campbell, Kentucky. Jeeps, trucks, they all bivouacked right there initially on the campus of Little Rock Central High School, the football stadium. And they circled our school. I want you to think about that, 1,200 military airborne troopers there on our campus that then infiltrated into the high school to be our bodyguards, to walk with us into the school from classroom to classroom. They did not come into the classrooms, but they were stationed outside of the classroom. And they had fixed bayonets. And it was not until the 50th anniversary that I heard that they did not have guns, did not have bullets in those guns, which I am glad that was the case. But just the sight of that gun with a bayonet on it was at least something to make you think about it twice. We soon began to understand that getting into school was only half the battle. It was a year like no other for the 9 of us, and it wasn't just hard for us. It was especially hard for our parents who lost their jobs, had to leave town to find work, who suffered because we were the first Black students at Central. Many other students in the school weren't accepting of us either. They would have been pleased had we not gone to what they considered their school. And it was a tough year. The challenges come into our lives so that we learn lessons. I learned to hang in there until the job is done. I learned to trust myself and my own instincts first. I learned that others were there for me, my parents, my church, my neighbors, and even strangers who sent letters through the mail. That year was quite a year. The lone senior was Ernest Green, who graduated in May of 1958, witnessed by the great Dr. Martin Luther King. Now, Ernie didn't know that he was going to be there. He just happened to be down in Pine Bluff, giving his keynote at a graduation in Arkansas. I don't know what it's called now. It's a part of the University of Arkansas's school system. But he was able to use one of Mrs. Green's tickets to have the opportunity to watch Ernie graduate. The governor still was not through. He closed all the high schools in 1958-59. That was Central High School, Horace Mann High School, which was one of the two new high schools that were built after the 1954 decision of Brown versus Board, and Hall High School, which was the other new school, in two different locations, one on the west side of town and one on the east side of town. And also the trade school that was closed. That year that the schools were closed, naturally the juniors wanted to graduate. So most of them left. One had already been sent to New York City to live with Drs. Mamie and Kenneth Clark, who had been expelled. Her name was Manny Jean Brown. Unjustifiable as far as I'm concerned. But she was already gone in January of 1958. But those juniors wanted to graduate, and I'm sure you understand that. So two ended up in California, and two others did remain, and they stayed here with me and Jefferson, who was the other sophomore. And we took correspondence courses from the University of Arkansas for the year of 1958-59. And with that, I also went to summer school in St. Louis and in Chicago before attending Michigan State University. I'm going to wrap up it this way. In 1957, September 25th, we went as teenagers, anxious, worried that we had missed our 2 weeks of school. We didn't know what the day would hold or what would happen to us in the year ahead. We became the designated drivers of Brown versus Board of Education. 1987, 30 years later, was the first time all 9 of us got together, right here in Little Rock. It was rather emotional time for all of us. Governor Clinton welcomed us into the governor's mansion. Hillary Clinton, who had been under the weather at the time, came down to the kitchen and we talked until the wee hours of the morning. They were very, very hospitable. In 1997, at the 40th anniversary, Governor Clinton was now President Clinton. And the welcome here in Little Rock for the Little Rock 9 was overwhelming, kind and gracious by this city. I do think that they really wanted to get things right the ship in some sense. The businesses here in Little Rock worked with this particular committee. 2007, 50 years later, all of us still together as the Little Rock 9. We had grown older, but we all had made it. We had children, grandchildren, each of us successful in our own ways in the world in which we lived. It was give back time, and we had a Little Rock 9 foundation, one supporting young high school students making their next step toward college. We were happy to see each other, happy to call one another friend, and with a nation that had honored us with the Congressional Gold Medal. We had a place in modern day civil rights movement, something we never sought, but was granted to us. 2017, 60 years later, we returned again to Little Rock Central High School as true senior citizens. One of us is missing at that time, our friend Jefferson Thomas, because of his right to speak his name aloud. He was the one with the engaging sense of humor. We missed you. and only my mother, Juanita Walls, remained as one of the parents. And at that time, we had number 45, who behind the scenes and through his then Twitter account, we became, as we were 61 years ago, anxious and worried about what lies ahead. But knowing as a race, we're strong people, and in the words of an old Negro spiritual, we have come too far to turn back now. And the same goes for this 65th year. Thank you for your interest in my piece of story. More of the story is available in my book, A Mighty Long Way, My Journey to Justice in Norwalk Central High School. So let's return again now to you and your task. I had my turn. I did my best. I went to school every day where I was not wanted. Getting into school meant only the smallest thing. Our presence didn't stop the bomb threats. My own home was bombed in 1960 with me and my mother and sisters in it. Our presence didn't mean that people started to accept us. But every day we went back and did it again. We showed up, we did our best. Later we were to learn that every one of us suffered from a form of PTSD. We had it before we knew what it was called. Now it is your turn. If you don't like what you see, plan to do something about it. You will be the ones who change the picture. And remember too, the first thing you must do, and I know most of you in here are registered, you must vote. Vote for those who share your view of the world. And if you don't do this, you cannot complain. Vote, vote, vote. It is the one thing above all the rest that I want you to remember. Thank you for paying attention to my story. Now you young and smart waterboard people, go out there and make a difference in this world. Do it for yourselves and for those who will come after you. Thank you and Godspeed.